Hello everyone, Phreak here. Welcome to episode 2 of the NALCS Dungeons & Dragons campaign. In our first episode, we introduced the heroes and they all got to level 2. If you want the abridged version of that, they cleared out the town of goblins, the town of Nightstone. It was not naturally inhabited by goblins, it was being ransacked, and they discovered that every living being they could find didn't exist. They were either dead, crushed under gigantic rocks dropped from above, or they had vacated somehow. The drawbridge was down, and goblins were looting everything. They, generally speaking, murder-hoboed pretty much all of the goblins. To be fair, not all of them would have been happy to, give away their loot, but some of them might have been able to. Either way, they all died, and the beginning of the town was cleared. Now, they did notice that there was one survivor, a woman named Kella, who was very afraid and frightened up in the tavern, which is here at the very top. In talking with her, they had sussed out that she was actually a member of a not very well-known spy, smuggling, maybe assassination organization known as the Zhentarim. And that immediately raised their suspicions. They figured out that she had comrades coming somewhat soon, and they wanted to take over the town. However, it was getting late. They decided to go sleep for the night. Now, two of the party members were elves, and still are, and because they only have to trance, they decided that they would camp out alongside some of the good guard towers, one of which being to the south, overseeing a broken bridge towards this keep to the south, and one of them was going to stay at a guard tower to the west overlooking the drawbridge, meaning that no one would be able to come in or out of their sort of domain without noticing. And as the night passed, they woke up without much incident other than leveling up, and those who were religious being visited by their deities, and thus gaining their powers. That all went pretty well, and I believe that's the recap of the first session. So they wake up early in the morning and decide, hey, we should explore the rest of the town. There is a broken bridge to the south. Maybe we'll find survivors there. None of them seem too terribly suspicious of Kella, and so they simply leave her to her own devices. They don't tie her up. They don't bring her with with them. They leave Kella on to do whatever she wants to do. They leave the drawbridge up, but they leave Kella alone, and the entire group decides they want to cross the bridge. Now, this bridge has also been knocked out by one of the giant rocks that were dropped down, and it was a slight uphill slope across the bridge, so it's a little bit of a difficult jump. That said, the orc paladin, or half-orc paladin, Grokla Machno, made that jump no problem. He's very forthright and headstrong sort of character. I was happy to do that. Part of that party, though, is somewhat ingenious. They had some rope, they had some batons, they managed to fasten around, and with a fairly reasonably sturdy sort of rope bridge to bridge the gap, quite literally, the party came across and investigated the keep. In the keep, which is down to the very south here, they found out that it too had been bombarded by rocks. Parts of the corners had been destroyed, including what they discovered to be the lady overseeing the entire place. Lady Nandar had sadly been killed by falling rocks and debris. There were, however, 4 surviving guards, and the guards said, hey, we're here a bit alone. We really couldn't cross the bridge ourselves. None of us were really brave enough to make the jump. And it's only been a couple of days, so, they were eating what rations were left over. But they basically said hello, and the party said, cool, nice to meet you. Not a lot of interesting things transpired. They asked, hey, what is this missing Nightstone in the middle of town? The guards weren't really giving up a lot of information. Didn't seem to be anything of really great value. Overall, the guards, though, really wanted to see their citizens returned home. They asked the adventurers to please not disturb Lady Velrosa Nandar's belongings up in her bedroom, but otherwise they were happy to be brought back as needed. The adventurer says, okay, thanks very much. They chose to come back. They jumped back across the bridge, and they noticed that, in their absence, Kella had lowered the drawbridge, and her Zhentarim allies had come by. And so after a quick parley with about now 8 spies, and the party is about 6 people, maybe 7, they realized, we are missing people. Or rather, we are outnumbered. Not that they're missing people, I'm sorry, that was my brain thinking forward to a different session. It's 3 a.m. local time when I'm doing this. So they said, okay, well, this is a bit concerning. Suddenly there's well, not spies. We're to know who you are and what you want. But they were saying, hey, we're just here to take over the town. We don't really want to do it any harm. However, if there's any guards or like any people sort of that would still be defending the town, I don't expect they'll be on our side. Either get them to leave or give us their heads. 25 gold apiece. We'll pay you for your services, adventurers. Please ensure this town is ours. We appreciate, as they sort of see the warg and goblin corpses, that you guys can clearly take care of yourselves. And he, shows a big pouch of gold and says, I will pay you if you can get rid of all of the guards. The adventurers come back, hop back over the bridge. The rope bridge is still standing, no big problem. And they say, hey, guards, we were tasked with killing you. And the guards go, whoa, 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 whoa. We don't want to die. In fact, we can buy your fealty. There's very good treasure here. We're not an incredibly rich town, but there is treasure to be had. Please don't kill us, and we'll tell you how to make more money than you would have gotten by killing us. And they say, okay, we're going to come up with a plan. We don't want the Zhentarim to escape, so we got to figure out a way to raise the drawbridge back, bring the guards over, make them appear like they're unarmed, and then spring a trap. And the 10 of us, or I guess 11 of us, because there's 7 adventurers plus the 4 guards, that will outnumber the Zhentarim, and we're going to make our way through it. And so they once again shepherd everyone back across the bridge. They sort of fake type everyone's hands. They've all got their arms behind their backs, and they line up, and they say, okay, well, now's the time, and they just sort of charge, and they say, let's go fight. Now, in the meantime, in that sort of lull in between seeing them the first time and coming back, the Zhentarim, of course, wanted to take over the town, and so they spread out most of their agents across all these various guard towers and these corners dotting the wall. Hopefully my map kind of makes sense for what the town of Nightstone looks like. It's surrounded by a big moat. There's a drawbridge over to the left-hand side, and all these squares are guard towers. So there's a bunch of crossbow-wielding various, spies or whatever you want to call them, plus Kella, plus, well, he doesn't live very long, doesn't need a name, the other leader of the Zhentarim. Now, one thing that Val noticed in talking with him the first time, then talking with him later, was they had already discovered that these winged serpents that often hang out on a shoulder or on someone's arm are the very common messengers of the Zhentarim. And he recollected, with just a very good passive perception score and a pretty keen mind, realized that when he came over the first time, he had a pet flying snake. He doesn't anymore. Don't know quite when it left, but clearly a message was sent at some point. Okay. Either way, they decide to spring their trap, and they go and go into combat, and they begin to fight. Now, the male leader of the Zhentarim is actually incredibly tanky, incredibly durable, and quite a good fighter, but the squad is outnumbered. He spends his first turn drinking a potion of invulnerability, which gives him resistance to all damage for a minute, which is 10 turns in D&D. That's quite a long time to go, or 10 rounds, same difference. Well, it's great because the very first spell that Groklo Machno casts, now that he's a level 2 paladin and has the ability to cast spells, he decided to learn Command. So he commands this leader to vomit. Okay, sure, vomiting is a little bit self-harming, but I like to reward ingenuity, and so the save fails. Sure enough, the boss spends his next turn retching, vomiting, and just upchucking everything in his stomach contents, which I rule as, it's obviously a fast-acting potion, but to keep the rewards of it, it's got to stay in your stomach. So I decide that the potion will only last 3 turns, or rounds, instead of 10, which I get to sort of announce as I sort of say, hey, his skin after 3 rounds of combat returns back to normal. He seems a bit more doable. Most of the town guard splits up and dashes into the various guard towers, starts knocking down some of the lesser Zhentarim. The halfling does the same thing, jumps around, does cool stuff. Vol, the ranger, jumps onto this tavern, which, by the way, exposes him to every possible archery sort of place, because he's on top of a building instead of under the building, kind of shielding himself from crossbow bolts. The party could have easily knocked sort of maybe 2 or 3 of these out of line of sight. Didn't choose to. They front line, just kept swinging their swords and axes, and eventually they managed to make it work. So Poor Endry, who learned Ice Knife as his major damage tool, realized that AoE was going to be more painful to the party than painful to the Zhentarim, as the Zhentarim had spread out, and the party was mobbing onto a boss. So all they had to do was cast Ray of Frost, this poor little cantrip, and do his 1d8 damage when it hit. Boss is pretty well armored, like an 18 AC or something. He did like 8 damage all fight. Wasn't very good. Jesus also decided that he was still too cool for fighting and just spent his turn basically help actioning Grocklo Machna to help him fish for crits. Never did crit, but still over the course of time they managed to wear him down. So that was kind of nice. They managed to eventually kill all the Zhentarim. They get rid of all the corpses. They loot all the bodies. I believe one or two of the guards were actually killed during this whole interaction, but the rest of the party had stayed conscious. They did a pretty good job. Vol went down, I think, 1 HP at a certain point, chose to stay perched up on top of the tavern, didn't seem to care too much. Overall, they managed to do a pretty good job at the fight, so that was great. They managed to clear out the Zhentarim, a bit worse for wear, a bit damaged, but, you know, they came into it after a long rest, after a pretty restful night's sleep, so they're okay. The guards are reasonably happy, and they go, okay, whew, that was nice, but now that we've saved your town once again, guards, how about that payment? And this is where it got kind of interesting. So they once again to make their way back across the bridge to the south, and they make their way back to the keep down here. And a lot of the party is fairly unscrupulous. I think a lot of you might have noticed this during the first sort of recap in the first session. But they after they talk to the guards, they say, okay, guards, what's going on? And they go, okay, well, Lady Nandar keeps a chest of goods that obviously are not for her to have anymore. That's going to be just fine. However, I want you to be prepared. This chest is trapped. There is a flying scimitar or flying sword, living sword. I forget exactly what it's called, but basically there is a sword hanging above the door to the bedroom that will animate when anyone but her opens the chest. I don't know how you would solve that. There's lots of goodies, but I don't want you to be surprised by an animated sword coming after you. And they go, so you're not giving us gear, you're just warning us there's traps on the gear. And they go, yes, but you're going to kill us. We had to think of something. And they go, okay, fair point. They don't really get punished for it, but they do keep the guards outside the keep as about half the party goes to ransack. The way they choose to ransack is, now Lady Nandar is crushed under piles of rubble. She's basically splayed out like you've seen in so many crime scenes in television and movies. But her limbs, at least the ones in the top half of her body, are visible. And so Grocklo, being as aggressive as he is, I believe it's Grocklo, I forget exactly, but someone with a sword, a slashing one, decides to chop her arm off. Chops the arm off, walks it upstairs to the bedroom, and uses that to open the chest. And I'm going, okay, that's not in the rules, but yeah, it opens without problem. The sword doesn't animate. You're good. It's up. No big deal. They open the chest. They loot like hundreds of gold worth of stuff. Endry plus many of the rest of the crew had started looting bodies as well. Endry specifically, while they were fighting the Zhentarim, when it was down to like 1 or 2 left, they knew it wasn't going to be a problem anymore. And Endry starts looting early. In fact, during this, Jesus had also started talking to one of the guards saying, okay, look, we're winning. How do we get the loot now? Talk to me now. Now, Jesus, again, actually a thief by trade coming into this character, essentially, so that feels very in character. Andrew's more just selfish, which that's fine as well. Honestly, his character is figuring out how evil he's supposed to be. Jesus and Endry have kind of similar paths going on there. As characters, they are deciding between good and evil, and it's very easy to role play evil as selfish until you start betraying party members, which gets a little bit extreme. So I think that's fine. I think that's kind of reasonable. So again, they figure out all this stuff. They loot hundreds and hundreds of gold worth of valuable jewelry and a magical scroll and all this stuff from the corpses of the higher up Zhentarim, as well as the chest in Lady Nandar's bedroom. And so they get some more gear and they're cool, we're richer, this is nice. Of course, there's still no town members, but okay, we managed to make that happen. Paladin of Conquest, as he is, Grocklo Machna, also takes this golden wedding ring off of Lady Nandar's decapitated, that's not the right word, dismembered arm. He says, in character, as a token of his conquest, he took over this town. The regular townspeople were killed or ran away. He killed all the goblins. He killed all the Zhentarim. He was there for all of it. This is a token of his conquest, which I thought is a really cool thing. Yes, it could be greedy, but as we learn later on in playing this campaign, he doesn't sell it, even though it's the single most valuable thing anyone in the party has. It's a token of conquest. He would rather have the token than money. I love it. Okay, so they have gotten rid of all the dangers. They're all fine. The drawbridge is up. Whew, okay, but it's still late morning. I mean, they woke up and first thing they saw was the Zhentarim coming in trying to take over, and they killed a bunch of people. So they go, okay, well, we've collected ourselves. We're ready to go. Okay, what's next? And the guards go, well, we would really like if you would save the rest of the town. And not everyone's super happy about helping people for no good reason, but enough of them have good enough alignment, and especially with characters like Baguette, who really, really want to be known for their good deeds. He's on a quest to redeem his family name. They're like, okay, you know what? Maybe we'd be willing to clear out this cave. Maybe there is reward in it. Who knows? We'll find out. But before they do, there is another band of miscreants that start coming down from the northern end. This is a dirt path that bends to the northwest towards the forest, our deep forest. And they start hearing yells and shouts, and a couple of them pop into the guard tower, but not all of them. Now keep in mind, these walls are a good 15 feet tall, so unless you are in a guard tower, you don't know what's going on outside the town. A quick point of standing is, as they made their way one final time out of the keep back towards town, Graclo Machno, macho man that he is, and they had already taken the rope back up, decided he's going to go for a jump to make his way across the bridge one more time, and tripped and fell unconscious. So Graclo Machno is out of action, and he's just sort of slumped down on the bridge essentially. Now, out of character, he couldn't make the session. I'm usually fairly keen to let people play the characters out if they really want to, but also if they're not going to miss anything too terribly important, I find a way to keep the character out of the thing, and I figured him taking a blind jump off the bridge and tripping and falling, something that he would do. So he was out for the session, and Graclo Machno is unconscious. Okay, so they get back to the center of town, and they start hearing this crazy rabble coming from the northwest, and they realize that, oh my gosh, there is 24 orcs running south towards the town. And that's not the way they came, right? The party had come from the road from the south to the north. These are orcs coming from the north to the south. Maybe from the forest, they're not sure. They didn't get a good glimpse. But a couple of them run up to the guard towers, and they look over and like, yep, it's 20-something orcs coming down to the town. This is a little bit dangerous. And they're all like pretty moderately armored. They've got a bunch of great axes. One of them looks more like a wizard type. This is kind of scary. This is dangerous, and there's only 6 of us now. Graclo Machno's unconscious. Okay, maybe the guards can help too, but they don't have bows. They've got javelins, and there's only like 1 or 2 left. It's not like they're going to throw all of their armaments away just for 1d6 of damage. So the orcs come by, and then they notice right before the orcs start getting into range that there are a few wood elves on horseback with longbows giving chase. And they go, okay, there's some elves chasing the orcs out. That's interesting. And once the party starts to realize, oh, there's orcs, Jesus goes, diplomatic solution. Again, he's still not a fighter. He has done 0 damage so far this entire campaign. And we are in person 3 sessions in at this point. It's day 2 of the campaign in character, but in person we're at session 3 now. And he goes, well, I know an orc. I know an orc. And he runs and grabs a wheelbarrow from the stable house to the east, I should say, and goes and picks up Graclo Machno. Now, Graclo is a heavily armored half-orc. This is 300-something pounds of lifting. Jesus is not particularly strong. I have him roll athletics. He rolls really well. He picks up Graclo and gets him into the wheelbarrow and spends his next 2 or 3 turns wheelbarrowing the orc towards the orcs to look for a diplomatic solution. I loved it. Amazing stuff by the player. Amazing by the character as well. Well, they don't get much time to parley with the orcs. The orcs want in, and they don't see anyone what looks like a friendly face here. In fact, they've got a high elf Baguette, who is a little bit racist still, decides that I don't want any of this, and they start doing damage. They pull back their bows. They start slinking some arrows. Now, not all of these party members have good ranged combat tools. Now, certainly Endry does. Ice Knife is great when you've got orcs packed together trying to climb the walls. but not everyone has great fighting there. For example, Brother Olahan, the poor monk, who is actually choosing to be unarmed, even though a quarterstaff would be more damage at this point in the game, choosing to only punch. Again, character choices, love it. Can only like spit on the orcs essentially. So the orcs try to climb the walls. The walls are very, very hard to climb. The athletics DC is basically 20 for them to climb the walls. So these 20 of them, the first like 18 or so, kind of glom up right around here, right in front of the walls. And there's a line of orcs just coming through here. And a few are sent to the south to find maybe another way in. They realize that a big wall can be difficult, so they send 4 scouts to the south, and the rest of them try to climb the wall. As you can guess, with a DC of 20, 1 or 2 get in per turn, but at the very start, 2 got in the very first round. And that posed a bit of a problem because suddenly they are threatening the guards, they're threatening some of the squishier ranged characters like Endry suddenly in melee range. And he throws out ice knives into the water, trying to AoE a whole bunch of them. And over the course of time, they beat them back. No one goes down, no one dies. They kill about 5 of the orcs. Around the 3rd round here, right as Groklo's getting wheelbarrowed in, the elves start to get in range. They start throwing arrows out as well, and this orc war chief, and no one speaks orc, sadly. The only one who does is still unconscious, unfortunately. The orc war chief yells something in orcish. For all of you, it's let's retreat, this isn't going to work. And they just run, and start dashing all the way to the south. They actually got the war chief. They spent almost all their time, by the way, focusing on the war chief. They didn't really try to thin out the horde, aside from the AoE from Ice Knife, and any of the ones who jumped over the wall were immediately engaged upon by everyone that could. They got the war chief down to about 2 HP. So they got really, really close to actually killing him, but he got out of range before they could kill him all the way. What's interesting, though, is they didn't spend their time thinning out the horde. They just focused on the boss. This is how they fought the Zhentarim, and it's how they fought the orc war chief as well, plus his gang of orcs. And there is a very substantial difference in health pools there. So I found that kind of interesting, that the players are very anti-boss focused. It's something that I'm probably going to have to use either for or against them, especially when the boss is a big dumb tank and not the primary damage threat. Like, they aimed for the boss more than they aimed for the wizard. The wizard, I think, mechanically, she's probably more of a cleric, summoned a spiritual weapon first round and dealt some really, really big damage with that. She actually almost knocked people unconscious in, like, the first round or 2. She was very, very dangerous. They did not go for her first, though. Either way, they passed through the fight, they managed to survive, and they got their way through it. Whew, okay. Well, they run away, and the elves show up, and they say... Now they see a high elf, which, you know, whatever, but they also see a wood elf in Vol. And so they say, okay, hey, kindred spirits here, elves, that's kind of nice to see. And they start talking back and forth, mostly in Elvish. And again, Baguette grew up around wood elves. He feels very comfortable. His dialect feels a bit more wood elf than a high elf. I'm deciding there's dialects among elves. I don't know if it's true, but I decided there is. And Vol is, okay, he's from the swamps. He's not from the same place, but, like, certainly full-blood wood elf. And so they spend time conversing. Half the time the character's like, well, we speak common and they're just talking about us, maybe, we don't know, and they're kind of just awkwardly like, guess they're talking without us, and feeling a bit left out, but such is life. I'm gonna talk with the wood elves a little bit of our deep forest, and they get a bit of history, like, hey, what's going on here, what are you guys trying to do, what's up with these orcs here? And they're called the ear seekers. These orcs chop off people's ears and wear them as jewelry, as pendants of conquest. Funnily enough, Groklo would have gotten along with them, but he was unconscious and missed the session. That's too bad. But either way, they sort of get a bit more history around what happened with Nightstone, what happened around the village. They discover that Nightstone used to be at war with the elves a couple decades ago. After a few of the Nightstone, well, several, a good dozen or so of the Nightstone citizens were killed, they eventually negotiated a ceasefire, a peace, and there's been this uneasy truce between the two civilizations ever since. So they're not at war anymore, they don't try to kill each other anymore, but they mostly stay out of each other's way. And Baguette really wants still some level of sovereignty to acknowledge him. And he goes, hey, you know, if you want to take over this town, I mean, it's undefended. I'm just saying, if you want it, you can have it. It's all in Elven, so the guards can't sort of say, hey, wait a second, this is ours. Elves are like, well, thanks for the advice. I appreciate that, but we're pretty happy with the forest. But hey, thanks very much. They continue talking to a little bit, and they say, you know what, look, you guys have been helpful, and we appreciate that we've got a couple of elves talking to. And at this point, the party's also learned that the civilians of Nightstone, from talking with the guards, are in a cave to the northwest, just shy of our deep forest. Just only a mile away. You can actually see it from where you are in the guard towers. And the elves go, okay, well, not for nothing, but look, you two seem okay. If you're trying to get into the caves, look, we don't know it super well, but you don't have to take the front entrance. These are natural caves. There's rivers and holes and whatnot. You could probably find a couple of ways into the cave you want to. Just FYI. I go, okay, hey, thanks very much for the information. And the elves are gone. They don't really want any more to do with them. They don't really want help. They're happy where they are. They're safe over in the forest. So the elves turn around, and it's like noon now, and they've already gotten through 2 big fights. And they go, wow, okay, sheesh, this has been quite the ordeal, but I guess here we are. And I guess it's time. It's only noon. Start scoping stuff out. We've got civilians to save. At this point, the characters hit level 3. And level 3 is where most of these members hit their subclasses. However, there has not been a good stopping point for most of these players. And, there's not been a good stopping point for most of these characters. I like level ups being in character to some degree. There being some kind of defining event. They gain their HP. Those who were trying to track their mechanical gains could do so. But as it turned out, again, out of session, out of character, most of the players coming into the next session, as we get ourselves towards session 4, had not had their characters really ready for the next level. And so almost no one actually had their level 3 features ready mechanically. And so we went through it without them. Not everyone was, again, they leveled up, they gained health, whatever, but we kind of just went forward and people didn't really gain all that much. Which, whatever. If you don't level your character doesn't level up. No big deal for me. And they went on to go scout out the caves to the northwest. I said, okay, well, what do we have here? What's going on in this area? And they take a circle around. The cave's not very big. It takes only about an hour or so to figure out what's around the cave. And they find a chimney in the sort of western edge. They find a passageway in on the western side, and they find a passageway in on the eastern side. They say, okay, there are definitely multiple ways into this cave. This is interesting. We can potentially lay some kind of ambush. And so, most of the party, by the way, stays in town. They decide they're going to have a short rest. They're going to heal. They're going to mend their wounds. And some of them are very, very hurt. They're going to spend some downtime in the middle of the day and just rest and relax and eat and pick over any of the still food left over in the town that the goblins didn't already eat in their ransacking adventures the previous day. So only 2 of the party went over to the northwest. I believe they brought the guards with them as well. So 2 of the party members and 2 of the guards head their way to the northwest towards the cave to scope everything out. And they decide the best way in is scaling down the chimney. And so they lower some rope. And I believe it's Vol who goes in first. He is an elf after all. He has dark vision. And he makes his way down the chimney. And as soon as he comes down, there is a goblin right in his face. And that's where we're going to end this episode of the recap. Certainly a substantially shorter one here. Let me know how that felt about you guys. I know I did breeze through combat rather quickly. One of the comments I did see in the previous video was how much time I spent talking about game rules versus how much time I spent talking just about the story of what happened in the major beats. Let me know which kind of level you prefer here. But overall, happy to keep taking feedback. Hope you enjoyed it. And next session, we'll talk about all the fun things that happened as Vol comes face to face with a goblin inside the caves. See you next time.